economics, we have to make a distinction between changes in quantity demanded versus changes in demand. Now, what we have been saying up until now is if we have a demand curve, let's say here's quantity and here's price, and of course our demand curve is downward sloping, looking something like that. We've been making the statement that, well, if we start out with a price, let's say of $1, then our quantity demanded, how much a buyer is willing and able to buy at that price, let's say is 50 units. So ceteris paribus, if the price of this good increases, let's say up to $2, then all else constant, this person isn't going to be able to afford as much of this good as they were before, and so the quantity demanded decreases. And therefore the quantity demanded may go down to, let's say, 40 units of the good. So when we say there has been a change in quantity demanded, that means there has been a movement along a given demand curve due to a change in price. Because you notice the only thing that changed in this example was the price of the good. Now, we have to talk about the difference between that and what we call a change in demand. When we say that demand has changed, we mean that there has been a shift of the entire demand curve due to something other than price. And the important part of this is it's due to something other than price. So price in and of itself will never shift a demand curve. So the idea is simply this. If we're starting off and we have a downward sloping demand curve, so here is our quantity here, and here's our price, what we're going to want to start doing now is marking our demand curve with a D sub 0. So that means that's a time period 0, so that's the initial demand curve that we're dealing with. If I make the statement that we have had an increase in demand, that means the entire demand curve has had a shift to the right. So regardless of what the price is, the quantity demanded is going to be higher. So the way you would show this in your model is to go in and take your demand curve and shift it parallel out and to the right to, let's say, D1. So that would be an increase in demand. If I say, or you read, there has been a decrease in demand, then this implies that the entire demand curve has had a shift to the left. So in your model, if you were starting at E0, you would take your entire demand curve and you would shift it parallel back into the left. So that would represent a decrease in demand.